Super Troopers wasn't built like a comedy. It was built like a dare, not with polish, not with restraint, with boredom, bad ideas, and confidence reckless enough to see it through. But behind the syrup, the sirens, the stupidity, it was a fight just to stay in control. They shut the door on movie stars and trusted themselves. They stayed in uniform long enough for the joke to blur into reality. And when studios walked away, fans forced the sequel into existence. These are 12 weird facts about Super Troopers, where stupidity was deliberate and commitment carried the whole thing. Number 1. Super Troopers wasn't born from some clean comedy pitch. It came from the kind of fear that hits your chest the second you see a border booth. Broken Lizard were still just a crew of friends doing road trips to Canada, and those drives weren't always responsible. So every crossing carried the same nightmare thought. What if the cops can tell we're high, and instead of arresting us, they decide to play with us? That paranoia became a running bit. Then it became a story engine. And then real life handed them a moment so insane they didn't even have to punch it up. According to the group, the basic DNA of that legendary opening scene came from an actual incident involving friends of the crew at the US-Canada border. Drugs were in the car. The stop got serious. Everyone's brains started sprinting. And when a joint was discovered and border agents ordered them out, one passenger didn't stash anything, didn't ditch anything, didn't think. He ate it. Not just a joint, a whole bag of mushrooms meant for a group. The kind of move you only make when your panic overrides your survival instincts. And once you do that, there's no play it cool. There's only consequences. He reportedly spent the next 2 days completely gone. That's the secret reason the opener hits like a hammer. It doesn't feel like a gag. It feels like recognizable terror. The joke isn't drugs are funny. The joke is the human brain under pressure, watching itself make the worst possible decision, while authority stands there calm and patient, holding all the power. Super Troopers looks absurd, but it's built on a real truth. Sometimes comedy isn't invented. It's what you tell later, after you survive it. Number 2. Super Troopers plays like 5 friends joking around with a camera, but for a long stretch, it wasn't a comedy in progress. It was a movie fighting for oxygen. The script went through 20+ drafts, and that grind is hiding inside the finished film. Not as mess, as density. Every scene feels loaded, because it was written like a group trying to outrun failure by never letting the audience breathe. Early on, Broken Lizard kept circling different versions, tweaking tone, chasing angles, even flirting with a throwback retro comedy vibe. And every time they got close, the same thing happened. Financing stalled. Momentum collapsed. The project fell back into limbo. And limbo hits different when you're not a studio team collecting paychecks. It hits when you're broke, exhausted, and watching your one shot slide away. So they stopped perfecting the script and started weaponizing it. They made a rule that sounds insane until you watch the movie. One joke every 6 seconds. That became the survival plan. Rewrites weren't about smoothing anything out. They were about tightening the rhythm until it felt like a machine. Punchlines stacked. Callbacks planted early like traps. Scenes rebuilt so the jokes weren't the destination anymore. They were the architecture. And it came with a real cost. By the time the script finally locked, nobody was doing victory laps. They were wiped out. Because the near breakup wasn't a dramatic legend. It was the mood in the room. When you rewrite something that many times, you stop arguing about jokes. You start arguing about whether the group makes it to the end. That's why the movie feels so reckless and alive. It wasn't born from ease. It was forged under pressure, until the pressure almost cracked the people writing it. Number 3. Once Broken Lizard finally had a script they believed in, the rejection didn't sound like, "This is bad." It sounded worse. "This is good, but..." Because every buyer saw the same thing and tried to pull it in a different direction. Fox was the first to lean in, and they didn't lean toward theaters. They looked at the pranks, the bits, the recurring characters, and saw TV. Cheap sets, repeatable gags, episodes forever. The pitch was basically, turn this into a series. Broken Lizard even played along long enough to write a pilot, trying to prove they could deliver the concept in that shape. Nothing happened. No green light, no momentum, just time burned. Then Miramax entered the picture, and the reaction got even stranger. The people in charge weren't sure what they were looking at. Not a clean approval, not a clear no. More like confusion mixed with instinct. The group got pulled into a Sundance moment that wasn't about notes or structure. It was about optics. A meetup at a bar. A public sighting. The kind of move that told the industry these guys might be real. And suddenly, they were. The closest thing to an actual movie deal arrived with Universal. They were willing to put up the budget Broken Lizard needed, right around $5.5 million. For a second, it it probably felt like the nightmare was ending. But the check came with a blade attached, new writers, a different director, changes to smooth out the weird edges, a safer version that looked like a normal studio comedy instead of a cult bomb waiting to happen. The exact kind of deal that gets your movie made and quietly kills what made it yours. Broken Lizard said no, and that decision almost erased the film completely, because no is expensive when you are broke and you have already been told yes a dozen times with strings. But they held the line anyway, not because they hated TV. They knew it could work episodically. They just refused to let Super Troopers become a diluted product that could run forever and mean nothing. And here's what that choice really meant. Once they turned down the last real offer, there were no more safety nets, no studios left to chase, no second lane to jump into. If Super Troopers was going to exist at all, it would take something Hollywood almost never offers: one person willing to fund the whole thing. Number 4. Super Troopers was not saved by a studio. It was saved by a favor. After years of rewrites and slammed doors, Jay Chandrasekhar agreed to read a script written by a friend's father. Just a courtesy. No agents, no pitch, no Hollywood smoke. Then Jay handed that same man the Super Troopers script, and instead of doing what every executive had done, picking it apart, softening it, demanding stars, the guy did something almost shocking. He laughed. He got it. And he wanted it made exactly as it was. He was a recently retired Wall Street investment banker, not a movie person, which is why this worked. He was not trying to control the comedy. He was trying to help it exist. So he wrote the check. One investor financed the entire film, roughly $1.25 million, which meant there was no safety net. If it failed hard. No studio cushion, no second funding round, just Broken Lizard betting their future on one person saying yes. And then the movie hit. The investor got his money back. A rare happy ending in indie filmmaking, especially for a weird cop comedy with no stars. Now here's the part that feels like it belongs in the film itself. The title did not come from a marketing meeting. It came from a mom. One of the guys mentioned the project at home, and his mother casually summed it up like it was already obvious. "Oh, so you're making a movie about Super Troopers." That was it. Clean, sticky, impossible to forget. A movie built on mocking authority was financed and named by parents outside the system, and that is exactly why it survived. Number 5. Super Troopers had every reason to play the coward's game. Tiny budget, no leverage, no studio safety net. The smart move would have been obvious. Attach a famous name, hand the keys to a proven director, sand the weird edges down until it looked like a normal studio comedy. Studios pushed for exactly that. As Broken Lizard chased roughly $5.5 million, interest kept showing up with poison inside it. One of the loudest suggestions was Ben Affleck, who was scorching hot at the time, and even when it wasn't Affleck, it was always the same message in a different suit. Swap the cast, swap the director, make it marketable, make it safe. Broken Lizard refused to blink. Their rule was non-negotiable. They would star in it themselves, and Jay Chandrasekhar would direct. Because if you remove the people who built the voice, you don't improve the movie, you replace it. And they knew a replaced Super Troopers might get financed, might even get released, but it would be dead on arrival. So they kept choosing the harder path, again and again. And that stubbornness shaped casting too. For Captain O'Hagan, they didn't want a recognizable actor. They wanted a comedy legend. They chased Bill Murray and even floated an offer around $100,000. It didn't happen. No dramatic story, no miracle yes, just another door that stayed shut. But the movie didn't collapse from those no's. It got sharper. Because when you stop chasing famous faces, you're forced to build something stronger than recognition. You build a tone, a rhythm, a world that only works if everyone's committed to the same weird little truth. And that freedom is why the film could still toss in a wild card like Linda Carter, the original Wonder Woman, as Governor Jessman. Not as a desperate stunt, as a wink. Super Troopers didn't get saved by a star. It got saved by the people who refused to hand it over. Number 6. Super Troopers feels loose, reckless, and slightly out of control because the production basically was. They shot on a razor-thin budget around Rockefeller State Park Preserve in Pleasantville, New York, using ordinary roads as Vermont highways and real pull-offs as checkpoints. No soundstage safety, no controlled bubble. Just a crew trying to steal a movie from the real world without the real world fighting back. Sometimes it did. The bulletproof cup scene was filmed near an actual prison, and the atmosphere went from funny to hostile fast. Inmates shouted at the cast during takes, especially at Steve Lemmy. It was loud, personal, and not something you can politely direct away. That tension under the jokes is real. Then there's the maple syrup scene, which is one of the best examples of Broken Lizard solving a problem in the dumbest possible way. The original plan was iced tea. On camera, it looked thin and fake, so they switched to real maple syrup, multiple takes. No clever substitute. The discomfort you feel watching it is not acting, it is survival. Even these safer bits were engineered chaos. The soap prank was not soap, it was white chocolate, made sugar-free because Brian Cox is diabetic and actually bites into it. That is not a prop joke. That is a logistics mission. And then they crossed a line that feels almost too real. One of the movie's nastiest insults, Kevin Heffernan screaming abuse at an older couple stuck in their car, was aimed at his actual parents. They agreed to help. They did not expect it to be that brutal. Details were bizarrely split between fake and painfully real. The mustaches were fake, the humiliation wasn't, and when they needed bodies in the background, they did not cast Hollywood extras. They called friends, Colgate classmates, alumni, anyone who'd show up and commit. That's why the movie has that energy. It wasn't polished into cult status. It was stumbled into, one uncomfortable take at a time. Number 7. For a movie obsessed with abusing authority, Super Troopers had a few moments where the joke stopped being pretend. During a roadside shoot, traffic control broke down and cars kept driving straight through frame, ruining takes. Instead of shutting the scene down, director Jay Chandrasekhar made a reckless call and told Kevin Heffernan to fix it. So Heffernan stepped into the road in full trooper uniform and started stopping traffic by hand. No badge, no permit, no legal right to do it, just pure confidence and a costume that looked official enough to make people obey. And once you do that once, the line gets easier to step over. Steve Lemmy drove around on public roads in uniform, even flashing police lights at real drivers, betting nobody would challenge it. Eric Stolhansky took it into full chaos. He got clocked at 100 miles per hour in a patrol car, with the siren accidentally engaged. A real officer pulled him over and somehow, through fast talking and sheer nerve, he walked away without consequences. No authorization, no safety net, just actors borrowing the power of the uniform and hoping the world played along. Years later, the universe gave the story its cleanest punchline. Lemmy got pulled over again for actual speeding. The officer recognized him from Super Troopers, grinned, and skipped the ticket.
Pulled over doing 120 miles an hour, and he looks in at me, and this cop is pissed off. He's like, "Do you have any idea how fast Super Troopers?" I said, "You got me." He's like, "Oh my God, you guys are hilarious." And he's like, "All right." And I'm like, "All right." And he's like, "All right." And I'm like, "All right." I think I am gonna let you off with a warning on this one. It's because I don't feel like filling out any paperwork tonight. It's not because Super Troopers is my favorite movie of all time.
Not because it was allowed, because the movie had already turned the whole situation into a shared joke. A comedy about cops who ignore rules accidentally became famous enough that real cops started quoting it back. Number 8. One of the strangest weapons Super Troopers ever pulled out wasn't a prank, it was Brian Cox. In the late 1990s, Cox had a very specific Hollywood shape. Serious, prestigious, heavy roles with real menace. The kind of actor you cast when you need a room to go cold. Nazis, abusers, authority figures who feel like a verdict. That reputation paid the bills, but it also put him in a cage. So this is the part that still feels backwards. Broken Lizard didn't land Brian Cox. Brian Cox went after them. According to director Jay Chandrasekhar, Cox reached out because he was sick of being the darkness in every story. And he wasn't asking for a cute little comedy detour. He wanted the full plunge. Cox adored broad comedy, especially Jerry Lewis. The physical ridiculousness, the shameless commitment, the willingness to look stupid on purpose and do it like it's important. So Broken Lizard took the leap, and Cox didn't play Captain O'Hagan like a guest star doing the group a favor. He played him like a Shakespearean tyrant trapped in a stoner movie. Every insult lands harder because it comes from a man who sounds like he's delivering a royal decree. Every explosion feels earned because he's not winking. He's convinced. And that's why the lines became immortal. For Cox, it was a jailbreak. Proof he could be loud, stupid, furious, and hilarious without losing his authority. For the movie, it was the anchor that made the chaos feel real. Sometimes the best casting isn't luck. It's an actor finally choosing freedom. Number 9. Casting Super Troopers wasn't about polish. It was about fearlessness. Broken Lizard needed someone who could match the movie's unhinged rhythm and make chaos feel effortless. That's how Marissa Coughlan landed Ursula. In her audition, she didn't just read the scene and smile politely. She detonated it. Out of nowhere, she launched into a dead-on Linda Blair impression from The Exorcist. No warm-up, no warning. Just full possession level commitment, like she'd been waiting her whole life to terrify a casting room for fun. And it worked. According to Jay Chandrasekhar, it wasn't only funny, it was a signal. She understood the tone. Super Troopers lives on performers who are willing to go past comfort, past normal, and into that risky space where the joke could either kill or become legendary. The best part is, this wasn't some random party trick she pulled once. Broken Lizard already knew her from Teaching Mrs. Tingle, where she'd done the same impression. So when she brought it back in the audition, sharper and louder, it felt like a calling card. A message that said, "I'm not here to play it safe." That energy is exactly why Ursula works in the film. She's not just a dispatcher. She's tuned to the madness. Flirty, ruthless, playful, and just weird enough to belong. In a movie built on commitment, she got the role by proving one thing: when the moment comes, you go all the way. Number 10. By the time Super Troopers hit theaters, it looked like a confident, locked-in comedy that knew exactly what it was doing. But behind the curtain, the movie was still being argued into existence. The ending you know was not the first ending. The theatrical version, where the troopers crawl back into the world as undercover delivery guys, and the stoners from the opening scene turn out to be cops, only survived because test audiences forced the issue. Broken Lizard filmed other finales, and some of them were meaner. One alternate ending put the troopers in a meat packing plant. Same basic rhythm, same "we are still cops" reveal, but with a grimy factory chase and a darker, uglier tone. The group has said it was shot, but it never became the version anyone remembers. Another ending went even colder. The troopers get fired for real and wind up in fast food. Same jokes, same behavior, different uniforms, no redemption, and audiences hated it. After spending the whole movie laughing at these idiots, people still wanted them to win. They wanted a landing, not a punishment. So Broken Lizard pivoted. The ending got lighter. The victory stayed. The movie kept its grin, but the identity crisis did not stop in the edit bay. The marketing was chaos too. In the US, posters leaned into goofy ensemble comedy. Troopers posed like a human pileup, almost selling it as a stoner sketch movie. In other countries, some posters practically rebranded it as a raunchy sex comedy, with the troopers stacked behind a woman's legs like it belonged in a totally different decade. Even the title shifted depending on where you lived. Germany got Super Troopers, the Super Cops. France got Super Patrol. Same film, different promise. Which is wild, because this movie did not become a cult favorite by being perfectly packaged. It survived because the actual thing was stronger than the confusion around it. The audience found the real identity for it, and they never let it go. Number 11. Super Troopers did not crawl into pop culture politely. It kicked the door in at Sundance in January 2001 and instantly proved Broken Lizard had tapped into a very specific kind of comedy addiction. Loud, stupid, committed, and weirdly precise. The buzz hit fast enough that Fox Searchlight stepped in and grabbed distribution, which meant this little indie prank suddenly had a real runway. Then it went wide in February 2002, and this is where the story gets fun. Because on the surface, the box office looks like a modest win. A scrappy, star-free comedy made for somewhere around 1 to 3 million that climbs to roughly 23.2 million worldwide. That is already a victory lap for a movie this niche. But theaters were just the first stop. The real takeover happened at home, VHS, DVD, late-night rewatches that turned into rituals. The kind of movie that does not just get quoted, it gets practiced. People did not recommend it like a normal film. They tested you. If you laughed at the opening scene, you were in. If you knew the lines, you belonged. And over time, the home media money reportedly blew past the theatrical run, with estimates commonly putting it well above 50 to 60 million. That is where the mustache really started printing cash. Critics never fully caught up to what was happening. Some reviews dismissed it as tasteless, including a brutal jab from the New York Times. Aggregators called it uneven. None of that mattered once the movie escaped the review page and landed in dorm rooms, apartments, and cable rotations. In places like Australia, it became the kind of cult rental staple that never really leaves the shelf. And that afterlife changed everything for Broken Lizard. It gave them leverage. It gave them a future. It is the reason they kept getting chances, leading to Club Dread, Beerfest, The Slammin' Salmon, Tacoma FD, and beyond. So the math is simple. Tiny budget, solid theatrical run, a home video explosion that turned a weird little cop comedy into a generational handshake. Critics argued, awards shrugged, audiences memorized, and that mustache rode all the way to the bank. Number 12. For a movie that became a cult habit almost overnight, Super Troopers took an insane 17 years to come back. Not because Broken Lizard didn't want it, because Hollywood didn't know what to do with a comedy that lived more on quotes and rewatches than on opening weekend math. For years, the sequel wasn't wasn't even a sequel. The first serious idea was a 1970s prequel called Super Troopers 76, a throwback concept about the troopers' fathers, built to chase that Smokey and the Bandit and Animal House energy. It got discussed, circled, and dragged along, then died the way most projects die, quietly. No headline, no closure. By 2009, they pivoted to what fans actually wanted. A true continuation set just months after the original, built around a US-Canada border dispute that throws the Vermont chaos back into motion. And even then, it still couldn't get moving because the same wall stayed up. Money, risk, studio hesitation. So in 2015, Broken Lizard did something almost unheard of. They went around the system and went straight to the people who kept the movie alive. They launched an Indiegogo campaign, and fans didn't just support it, they funded it. Depending on how you count totals, it brought in roughly $2 million to $4.5 million, setting platform records. With additional backing afterward, the budget grew to around $13 million, gigantic compared to the first film's scrappy roots. Super Troopers 2 finally hit theaters in 2018 and made about $32 million worldwide, enough to justify the gamble. Reaction was mixed, but the result was undeniable, because the real headline isn't whether the sequel was better or worse, it's that it exists at all. Not because a studio believed, because an audience refused to let the joke die. That's what makes Super Troopers hit harder than it should. It doesn't feel like a crafted comedy. It feels like a group of friends daring each other to go one step further, and refusing to stop. Behind every stupid grin and every perfectly timed line is a movie that was fought for, rewritten into submission, and held together by pure, stubborn will. Most comedies get made. This one got survived. So if this one still makes you laugh on instinct, drop a comment. Tell us what moment still kills you, and what chaotic classic we should pull over next. And if Super Troopers still lives in your quote rotation, you can bring it home by checking the links below for the Blu-ray or DVD. If you're a super fan, the 2-movie collection is there too, because you don't just watch Super Troopers, you quote it, you remember it, and somehow it never stops pulling you over.